Today's lecture is concerned with the biology of trees. The subject may seem familiar at first because trees are among the most ordinary large organisms in the human environment. They are visible in streets, gardens, parks, forests, farms, mountains, river valleys, and almost every region where climate and soil allow them to grow. Yet, the familiarity of trees can make their biology easy to overlook. A tree is often treated as a background object, rather than as a living system with a particular structure, a particular physiology, and a particular evolutionary strategy. In biological terms, a tree is usually understood as a perennial plant with a persistent woody stem. The word perennial means that the organism lives for more than one growing season. The word woody refers to the production of lignified tissue, especially secondary xylem, which gives the plant mechanical strength. This woody growth allows the organism to support itself above the ground and to maintain a body that can last for many years, and in some species, for centuries or even longer. Not all plants with woody stems are trees. Some are shrubs, vines, or other forms of woody plants. The distinction is partly practical rather than absolute. A tree is generally taller than a shrub and usually has a main trunk, or at least a dominant stem, that supports branches above the ground. But plant form is variable, and the boundary between a large shrub and a small tree is not always strict. In biology, categories are often useful even when they are not perfectly sharp. The basic biological problem that trees solve is the problem of access to light. Like other green plants, most trees depend on photosynthesis. Photosynthesis requires light, carbon dioxide, and water. In a dense plant community, light becomes a limited resource. Plants that can place their leaves above other plants often gain an advantage. The tree form is one answer to this problem. By building a trunk and branches, a tree lifts its leaves into a better position for receiving sunlight. However, growing upward creates other problems. A tall plant must support its own weight. It must move water from the soil to leaves that may be many meters above the ground. It must resist wind, gravity, drought, freezing, herbivores, insects, fungi, and mechanical damage. It must maintain living tissues while much of its body consists of dead structural material. A tree is therefore not simply a plant that has become large. It is a highly organized structure built around the demands of height, transport, support, and long-term survival. We can begin with the trunk, because the trunk is the central structure of most trees. From the outside, the trunk may appear to be a single solid column, but it is composed of several tissues with different functions. The outer surface is the bark. Bark protects the tree from physical injury, water loss, temperature changes, insects, and pathogens. It may be thin and smooth in some species, or thick, rough, cracked, and layered in others. These differences reflect age, species, environment, and growth pattern. Beneath the outer bark is a living transport tissue called phloem. Phloem carries sugars and other organic compounds from areas where they are produced, mainly the leaves, to areas where they are needed or stored. These destinations may include roots, developing buds, flowers, fruits, seeds, growing tissues, or damaged areas undergoing repair. Unlike water transport in the xylem, phloem transport can move in different directions depending on the needs of the plant. Inside the phloem is the vascular cambium. The cambium is a thin layer of dividing cells, and it is one of the most important tissues in the biology of trees. It produces new phloem toward the outside and new xylem toward the inside. This process is called secondary growth. Secondary growth allows the trunk, branches, and roots of a tree to increase in diameter over time. Without this tissue, a plant could grow in length but could not become a large woody organism in the usual sense. The xylem lies inward from the cambium. Xylem conducts water and dissolved minerals from the roots toward the leaves. In woody plants, xylem also becomes the main structural material of the trunk. What we ordinarily call wood is largely secondary xylem. In younger outer wood, water conduction may still be active. This region is often called sapwood. In older inner wood, conduction may no longer occur, and the tissue may become heartwood. Heartwood often contains chemical substances that make it darker and more resistant to decay, although the exact properties vary among species. The fact that much of a tree trunk consists of dead cells is biologically important. The structural strength of wood depends not on living cytoplasm but on cell walls. These cell walls are made largely of cellulose, hemicellulose, and lignin. Cellulose provides tensile strength, while lignin adds stiffness and compression resistance. The result is a biological material that is strong, relatively light, and capable of supporting large vertical structures. The roots of trees are often less visible than the trunk, but they are equally essential. Roots anchor the tree in the soil, absorb water, take up mineral nutrients, store carbohydrates, and interact with soil organisms. A common simplified image shows tree roots extending deeply downward in the same general shape as the branches above ground. In many cases, this image is misleading. Although some trees do develop deep roots, many roots are concentrated in the upper layers of soil, where water, oxygen, and organic matter are more available. Fine roots are especially important for absorption. These are small, delicate roots with a large surface area relative to their volume. They may be short-lived and are often replaced. Their function is not mainly mechanical support, but contact with soil water and dissolved nutrients. The soil around roots is not an inert medium. It contains bacteria, fungi, small animals, decaying organic material, air spaces, mineral particles, and water films. The root system of a tree functions within this complex soil environment. One of the most significant root associations is the relationship between tree roots and mycorrhizal fungi. Mycorrhizae are symbiotic associations between fungi and plant roots. In this relationship, the fungus helps the tree obtain water and nutrients, particularly nutrients such as phosphorus or nitrogen that may be difficult for roots to access alone. The tree, in return, supplies the fungus with carbohydrates produced through photosynthesis. This association is extremely common in trees. Some mycorrhizal fungi grow around the outside of roots, forming what are called ectomycorrhizal associations. Others grow into root cells, forming arbuscular mycorrhizal associations. These categories differ in structure and in the groups of plants and fungi involved. The essential point is that trees do not usually function as isolated individuals below ground. Their roots are part of a biological interface involving fungi, microorganisms, soil chemistry, and neighboring plants. Above ground, the branches of a tree arrange the leaves in space. This arrangement is not random. Branching patterns affect how efficiently the tree captures light, how it resists mechanical stress, how it competes with neighboring plants, and how it reproduces. Some trees develop broad crowns that spread horizontally. Others develop narrow vertical forms. Some branch densely. Others branch sparsely. Crown shape depends on genetics, light availability, wind, pruning, age, and damage. Leaves are the main organs of photosynthesis in most trees. A typical leaf has a thin, expanded blade that increases surface area for light capture. Its internal tissues contain chloroplasts, the organelles where photosynthesis occurs. The leaf also contains veins, which include xylem and phloem. Xylem brings water into the leaf, while phloem carries sugars away from it. The leaf surface contains small pores called stomata. These pores allow carbon dioxide to enter the leaf and oxygen to leave. They also allow water vapor to escape. This presents a fundamental trade-off. To photosynthesize, the tree must take in carbon dioxide. But when the stomata are open, the tree also loses water. Therefore, a tree must regulate gas exchange and water conservation at the same time. The opening and closing of stomata is controlled by guard cells. These cells change shape in response to water pressure, light, carbon dioxide levels, and chemical signals such as abscisic acid. When water is available and conditions are favorable, stomata may open, allowing carbon dioxide to enter. When water is scarce, stomata may close, reducing water loss but also limiting photosynthesis. This regulation is one example of how trees respond physiologically to their environment without movement in the animal sense. Photosynthesis can be summarized as the process by which light energy is used to convert carbon dioxide and water into organic compounds, mainly sugars, with oxygen released as a byproduct. The full biochemical process is complex and includes light-dependent reactions and the Calvin cycle. For the purpose of understanding tree biology, the important point is that photosynthesis allows trees to build their bodies using carbon from the atmosphere, water from the soil, and energy from sunlight. It is common to imagine that trees grow mostly from the soil because they are rooted in the ground. However, much of the dry mass of a tree comes from carbon dioxide taken from the air. Soil minerals are essential, but they make up a smaller portion of the dry mass. The carbon skeletons of cellulose, lignin, sugars, starches, and many other plant compounds ultimately come from atmospheric carbon dioxide fixed during photosynthesis. Water movement in trees is another major topic. Trees may need to transport water from roots to leaves at considerable height. They do this without a central pump. The main explanation is the cohesion tension theory. Water evaporates from moist surfaces inside the leaf and exits through stomata. This loss of water, called transpiration, creates tension in the water column inside the xylem. Because water molecules cohere to one another and adhere to the walls of xylem vessels or tracheids, this tension can pull water upward through the tree. This process depends on the physical properties of water, the structure of xylem, and the water potential gradient between soil, root, stem, leaf, and atmosphere. In simple terms, water moves from areas where it is more available to areas where it is less available. Dry air around the leaf can create a strong pull. Moist soil can supply water to the roots. The tree body acts as a continuous hydraulic pathway between soil and atmosphere. There are risks in this system. If the water column in the xylem breaks, air bubbles can form. This process is called embolism or cavitation. Air bubbles can block water transport. Drought increases the risk of this problem because tension in the xylem becomes greater. Different tree species vary in their resistance to embolism. Some are adapted to dry environments and have safer but sometimes less efficient xylem. Others transport water efficiently but may be more vulnerable under drought stress. The structure of xylem differs between major groups of trees. Conifers generally use tracheids for water transport and support. Flowering trees, or angiosperms, often have vessel elements that form wider tubes which can transport water more efficiently. However, wider vessels can also be more vulnerable to freezing-induced embolism or drought-related failure. These anatomical differences affect where different trees can live and how they respond to environmental stress. Growth in trees occurs in specific regions. At the tips of shoots and roots are apical meristems. These tissues produce primary growth, which increases length. Shoot apical meristems give rise to new stems, leaves, buds, and reproductive structures. Root apical meristems allow roots to extend through soil. The vascular cambium, as mentioned earlier, produces secondary growth, which increases thickness. The growth of a tree is therefore not uniform across its whole body. Most of the trunk does not expand by all cells dividing equally. Instead, new tissues are added in specific growth zones. The cambium adds new vascular tissue. Buds produce new shoots. Root tips produce new root length. This organization helps explain why a tree can preserve older structures while adding new growth each year. In seasonal climates, tree growth often follows an annual rhythm. During the growing season, the cambium is active and produces new xylem. Early in the season, the cells may be larger and have thinner walls, forming what is called early wood. Later in the season, the cells may be smaller and have thicker walls, forming late wood. The contrast between early wood and late wood can create annual growth rings. These rings can provide information about the tree's history and the environment in which it grew. Wide rings may indicate favorable conditions, such as sufficient water, light, and temperature. Narrow rings may indicate drought, cold, shading, disease, or competition. The scientific study of tree rings is called dendrochronology. It can be used to date wood, study past climates, and examine patterns of disturbance. However, ring interpretation must be done carefully, because growth is influenced by many factors at once. Trees also show seasonal changes in leaves. Deciduous trees shed their leaves during unfavorable seasons, commonly winter in temperate climates or dry seasons in some tropical and subtropical climates. Before leaf fall, many deciduous trees recover nutrients from the leaves. Chlorophyll breaks down, and other pigments may become visible. Carotenoids may produce yellow and orange colors, while anthocyanins may produce red or purple colors in some species. Leaf fall occurs through the formation of an abscission layer at the base of the leaf stalk. This layer weakens the connection between the leaf and the stem. Eventually, the leaf separates. This process reduces water loss and avoids maintaining delicate leaf tissue during conditions that would make photosynthesis inefficient or dangerous for the plant. Evergreen trees follow a different strategy. They retain leaves or needles for more than one growing season. This does not mean their leaves last forever. Evergreen trees also replace leaves, but they do so gradually rather than all at once. Evergreen leaves are often tougher, thicker, smaller, waxier, or otherwise adapted to reduce water loss and resist cold or dryness. These features allow the tree to continue photosynthesis during favorable periods without rebuilding the entire leaf canopy each year. The difference between deciduous and evergreen strategies illustrates a general biological principle. Organisms face trade-offs. A deciduous leaf may be broad, thin, and efficient in favorable conditions, but it is temporary. An evergreen needle may be less efficient per unit surface area, but it is durable. A fast-growing tree may compete successfully in open light, but may produce less dense wood. A slow-growing tree may tolerate shade and persist longer, but may be outcompeted in disturbed environments. There's no single ideal tree design. There are only different solutions to different environmental conditions. Trees also have reproductive strategies. Some trees reproduce through flowers and fruits, as flowering plants do. Others, such as conifers, reproduce through cones. Pollen may be carried by wind or by animals, depending on the species. Seeds may be dispersed by wind, water, gravity, birds, mammals, or other mechanisms. A seed contains an embryo and stored resources, protected by a seed coat. If conditions are suitable, the seed germinates, producing a young root and shoot. The early life of a tree is often highly vulnerable. Many seeds fail to germinate. Many seedlings die from drought, shade, herbivory, fungal infection, competition, or mechanical disturbance. This is one reason many trees produce large numbers of seeds. Reproductive success does not require every seed to become a mature tree. It requires enough offspring to survive under the conditions of that species' life history. Some tree species are adapted to open, disturbed environments. Their seeds may germinate quickly in full sunlight, and their seedlings may grow rapidly. Other species are shade-tolerant and can survive for long periods under a forest canopy with limited light. A shade-tolerant seedling may remain small for years. If a gap opens in the canopy, perhaps after a branch falls or an older tree dies, the seedling may then grow more quickly. Forest structure is therefore shaped by light availability, disturbance, and species-specific growth strategies. A forest is not merely a group of trees. It is an ecological system. Trees influence the physical and biological environment around them. Their canopies intercept sunlight and rainfall. Their roots stabilize soil and affect water movement. Their leaves, branches, and dead wood contribute organic matter to the forest floor. Their trunks and crowns provide habitat for birds, mammals, insects, fungi, mosses, lichens, and many other organisms. The decay of tree material is an essential part of forest biology. When leaves fall, they are broken down by fungi, bacteria, and small animals. Nutrients are gradually returned to the soil. Dead wood may decay over many years, supporting decomposer communities and storing carbon during the process. Decomposition is not simply the disappearance of dead matter. It is a biological transformation that connects living plants, soil organisms, atmospheric gases, and mineral cycles. Trees participate in major biogeochemical cycles. In the carbon cycle, they take carbon dioxide from the atmosphere and store carbon in wood, roots, leaves, and soil organic matter. In the water cycle, they absorb water from the soil and release water vapor to the atmosphere through transpiration. In nutrient cycles, they take up minerals, incorporate them into tissues, and eventually return them to soil through litterfall, root turnover, and decay. The role of trees in carbon storage is important, but it should be described accurately. Trees absorb carbon during photosynthesis, but they also respire. Dead trees decompose, and carbon may return to the atmosphere. Forests can function as carbon sinks when they accumulate more carbon than they release, but this depends on forest age, climate, disturbance, soil, species composition, and management. A young growing forest may absorb carbon rapidly. An old forest may store large amounts of carbon even if its annual net uptake is lower. A burned or cleared forest may release carbon. The relationship is complex. Trees also affect local climate. They provide shade, reduce surface temperatures, release water vapor, slow wind, and alter humidity. In urban environments, trees can reduce heat stress by shading pavement and buildings. In agricultural landscapes, tree lines may reduce wind erosion. In forests, the canopy creates a microclimate that differs from open ground. Temperature, humidity, light, and wind conditions beneath a forest canopy are modified by the trees themselves. The long life of some trees raises another biological question. How can a plant survive for such a long time? Several features contribute. Trees have modular growth. A tree is made of repeated units, including branches, leaves, buds, and roots. Damage to one part does not necessarily kill the entire organism. Trees also maintain meristems that can continue producing new tissues. They store carbohydrates. They compartmentalize wounds. They produce defensive chemicals. They can shed organs such as leaves and fine roots and replace them later. When a tree is injured, it does not heal in the same way an animal heals. It does not restore damaged tissue to its original condition. Instead, trees compartmentalize damage. They form chemical and physical barriers that limit the spread of decay, then grow new tissue around the injured area. This process can seal a wound externally, although the damaged tissue remains inside. As a result, an old tree may contain dead or decayed areas while still maintaining living tissues near the outer part of the trunk. This helps explain why a hollow tree can still be alive. The central wood may no longer be functional for water transport and may decay, while the cambium, phloem, and outer xylem continue to function. The living part of an old trunk is often closer to the outside. As long as sufficient vascular tissue remains intact, the tree may continue to produce leaves, flowers, fruits, and new growth. Tree defenses are varied. Bark provides mechanical protection. Resins and gums may seal wounds and deter insects. Chemical compounds in leaves and bark may reduce herbivory or inhibit pathogens. Some trees can produce new defensive compounds after attack. However, defenses have costs. Energy and resources used for defense are not available for growth or reproduction. Again, tree biology is shaped by trade-offs. Trees interact with herbivores, insects, and pathogens in complex ways. Some insects feed on leaves. Others bore into bark or wood. Some fungi form beneficial mycorrhizal relationships, while others cause disease or decay. Some animals disperse seeds, while others eat seeds. The same general category of organism can be harmful, beneficial, or neutral depending on the species and context. Tree populations also change over time through succession. After a disturbance, such as fire, flood, storm, landslide, or human clearing, certain species may establish first. These pioneer species are often fast-growing and adapted to high light. Over time, they may change the environment by creating shade, adding organic matter, and altering soil conditions. Other species may then establish. The plant community changes gradually. Succession is not always a simple, predictable sequence, but it is a useful concept for understanding long-term forest development. Fire is part of the ecology of many forests, though not all. Some tree species are adapted to frequent low-intensity fires. They may have thick bark, protected buds, or seeds that germinate after exposure to heat or smoke. Other forests are not adapted to frequent fire, and severe burning can cause major ecological change. Fire can release nutrients, reduce competition, create open space, and trigger regeneration in some species. It can also kill trees, remove organic matter, and alter soil. Its biological role depends on frequency, intensity, season, and ecosystem type. Wind also shapes tree growth. Mechanical stress from wind can influence trunk thickness, root development, and crown form. Trees growing in exposed areas may be shorter, more flexible, or asymmetrical. In dense forests, trees may grow tall and narrow as they compete for light. In open areas, branches may spread more widely. The form of a tree records, in part, the physical forces it has experienced. Water availability is one of the strongest limits on tree distribution. In dry climates, trees must reduce water loss, access deeper or more reliable water sources, or grow only in favorable locations such as riverbanks. In wet climates, drainage and oxygen availability in the soil may become important. Roots need oxygen for respiration. Waterlogged soils can limit root function unless a species has adaptations for low oxygen conditions. Temperature is another major limit. Freezing can damage living cells and disrupt water transport. Heat can increase water stress and affect enzymes. Different tree species have different tolerances. Some are adapted to boreal forests with long winters. Others are adapted to tropical climates with little frost. Climate influences not only where trees can survive, but also how quickly they grow, when they reproduce, and how they respond to stress. The biology of trees can therefore be understood at several levels. At the cellular level, trees depend on cell division, cell wall formation, water movement, photosynthesis, respiration, and chemical signaling. At the organ level, roots, trunks, branches, leaves, flowers, fruits, and seeds each perform specific functions. At the whole organism level, the tree balances growth, transport, support, storage, defense, and reproduction. At the ecosystem level, trees shape habitats, cycles of matter, and interactions among organisms. If we summarize the tree as a biological system, we can identify several central features. First, a tree is a photosynthetic organism that captures light energy and fixes carbon dioxide into organic compounds. Second, it is a structural organism that builds wood in order to support leaves above the ground. Third, it is a transport system that moves water upward through xylem and sugars through phloem. Fourth, it is a rooted organism that depends on soil water, minerals, oxygen, and interactions with fungi and microorganisms. Fifth, it is a long-lived organism that maintains growth through meristems and survives damage through compartmentalization and replacement of parts. Sixth, it is an ecological organism that interacts constantly with other species and with the physical environment. These points are basic, but they help prevent a common misunderstanding. A tree is not passive. It does not move from place to place, and its responses are usually slow compared with animal behavior, but it is physiologically active. It regulates gas exchange. It transports water and sugars. It grows toward light. It allocates resources. It responds to injury. It enters dormancy. It produces reproductive structures. It changes the environment around it. The apparent stillness of a tree is therefore not biological inactivity. It is simply a different scale of activity. Many tree processes occur over hours, days, seasons, years, and decades. Leaves may respond to light within shorter time frames. Stomata may open and close. Water flow may change during the day. Cambial growth may follow seasonal patterns. Wood accumulation may be measured over years. Forest succession may be measured over decades or centuries. To study trees properly, one must be willing to think at these different timescales. A single leaf may function for weeks, months, or several years. A fine root may live briefly and be replaced. A trunk may persist for the lifetime of the organism. A forest may contain trees at many stages of life and death. The biology of trees is therefore not only the study of individual organisms, but also the study of time, structure, and environmental exchange. In conclusion, trees are large, woody plants, but that definition is only the beginning. Their form is the result of photosynthesis, competition for light, mechanical support, vascular transport, secondary growth, root-soil interaction, seasonal regulation, defense, reproduction, and ecological relationship. The trunk, roots, leaves, bark, cambium, xylem, and phloem are not separate topics but parts of a single integrated system. A tree stands because wood supports it. It grows because meristems produce new tissues. It survives because it regulates water, stores carbon, protects its living layers, and responds to environmental conditions. It reproduces through seeds. Spores in older plant lineages are not the normal reproductive mode for modern trees, and seedlings enter a competitive environment where only some will survive. It contributes to ecosystems by shaping light, soil, moisture, habitat, and nutrient cycles. The study of trees is therefore a study of plant structure, plant physiology, ecology, evolution, and environmental history. It is also a useful example of how biology often works through gradual processes rather than sudden events. Growth is incremental. Wood is added layer by layer. Roots explore soil gradually. Leaves operate through repeated exchange with the atmosphere. Forests develop through many small changes accumulated over time.